But yes, definitely. I think start.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Long Hill Report. I'm Richard Morchoe. And today we have Southbridge Councilman and political thinker Gus Steeves to help me with through this half hour, because we have a lot to discuss about the current silly season and what a great primary we've had.
That's a good way to describe it. It's definitely become a silly season. It makes me think of Monty Python's Ministry of Silly Walks. It might be the best way to describe what's going on right now.
Well, one thing I'm going to bring up about this season that has really upset me is we've just been through the impeachment of the president and his trial. And I heard way too many people say it was almost a crime that he did not give that money to the guns or whatever, the Javelin anti-tank weapons, to Ukraine quickly, because it's, and the term is, and they all used it, we have to fight them over there.
No, we don't.
So we don't have to fight them over here. Okay, I agree with you.
Yeah,
I mean, but who was making that was all the heavy hitters. Like they all went to Harvard.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to close Harvard. The place is a kindergarten. I mean, what it's foisting on the world is horrible if they're saying that. And that was said after 9/11. Now, 9/11, they didn't invade with a fleet and an army. They said, what was it, 19 guys?
And box cutters.
So we had bad intelligence, bad police work that allowed that. So we had a big invasion of the war that was never ending. Now, in the primary season, how this relates to the primary season is, there was only one candidate seriously talking about foreign affairs, and she's not allowed on the debate.
That's true.
Technically not allowed in the, I mean, she could be there, but we all know she's not. They're not going to give her a chance.
She's getting like 8% of polling. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a lot. There's a lot of reason for that. No, they are avoiding foreign affairs of the.
I totally agree, and that's part of the problem.
So
I agree.
Supposedly, we all agree now in the mainstream media and on the debate stage that we've got to be over there in Ukraine, but nobody will talk about it on the debate stage. What is going on?
Lots of money.
Over to you, Guy.
In a lot of cases, I think what we're seeing is the concentration of money in the hands of defense contractors is driving a lot of sales of these kinds of devices to Ukraine and other countries. And it's really profitable to keep this war on terror going without any real end. It's beneficial to them, not to the rest of us, certainly not to the countries we're in. But I think to go back specifically to the particular Ukraine thing, that was not something, we shouldn't be sending them $400 million in weapons anyway.
That's the,
that's
the scandal.
You go back to the early 90s, back when the Soviet Union collapsed. Our government promised Gorbachev at the time that we would not be expanding NATO.
The phrase was,
with the exception of like East Germany.
The phrase was, NATO would expand not
one closer
not
step.
1 inch,
Yeah.
1 inch.
Yes.
I mean, and we told the truth because it's been millions of inches.
Not quite what we not quite what they heard, that's for sure. But of course, we're in a situation now with the Ukraine, is that we're in an area that has very rarely through history had any connection to Western Europe. It's always been part of Russia,
part of the empire.
Yeah,
it was never. It wasn't. The historical thing was kind of vague. The Russians, when they first took over the Ukraine.
Well, Kiev was the first capital of Russia.
Yeah,
and then it moved to Moscow.
It was called Kievan Rus.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's kind of muddled. The first imperial at first Tsar, his government said there is no such thing as Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
But they kind of allowed the Ukraine to sort of have its own kind of identity because some of their best troops were Cossacks.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of muddled. But how is it our business?
I agree, exactly. I mean, what you see, the real distinction there is actually probably goes back to the Mongol era, where you've got it's an ecological distinction, really. Is you've got the cold forest lands that basically center on Moscow and what's now St. Petersburg. And the open steppe lands that focus on what is primarily the Ukraine and southern parts of Russia, going over to the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. And those areas were dominated by the Mongols, and the northern areas were tributary to the Mongols, but they were quasi-independent.
But it wasn't as
and
much,
manipulated all the time.
It wasn't as much Mongols as Tatars.
Them too.
The Mongols came and went quickly. The Mongols are like any big horse empire. It expands quickly and then collapses.
True.
Or,
That happens with the
or,
world.
or is assimilated.
Yes.
And
That's
the
true.
Mongols expanded quick, and then they were gone.
Mostly, that's true.
And then they're probably one of the weakest states in the world now, but they were the most powerful because they were horse archers, which is something European and armies that didn't use horse archery had real problems with. Because you could stand off and your guys didn't get killed, and the other guys, oh gosh. But once you were big, sooner or later, with corruption, everything, you collapse. But we are in a very silly season. We have a guy who's trying to buy the election, and he wouldn't say that, and he's
his $400 million says it though, quite loud.
and he's rising in the polls. We have a guy who is basically McKinsey's candidate, Pete Buttigieg, Wall Street Pete. He has had donations from I think it's 1,599 corporate lawyers. That doesn't tell you something?
No kidding. Bloomberg has had donations from one guy himself.
In fact, he's making donations to a lot of people.
Yeah, that in itself is really questionable.
Well, I mean, that's he's doing something for somebody.
Well, that's the issue, is that he's doing something for a variety. He's been for years doing something for a variety of people to help them behind the scenes get what they wanted. And now he's kind of calling in those chits and saying, hey, come support my campaign. I'm come support my campaign because I'm the only guy. You get this devil over here called Bernie Sanders that they can target because he's actually saying stuff and doing the work necessary to get out there to actually reach out to the American people, whether you agree with some of his points or not. I personally do. But he's the one who's doing the work to actually try to reach out. He's been doing it since the 2016 election, maybe even before that.
He was.
And he's been effective at it, and they're scared of that.
That was a skullduggery.
Oh, totally, absolutely.
Let's face it.
The DNC is.
If I had a picture, if I had a picture dictionary of unlovable characters, Hillary Clinton's picture would be right there. Everybody knows that. So she had to do something to survive this and win. And she was, and she and her buddy, what's her name from Florida? Wasserman Schultz.
Oh, right, yeah, right, okay.
They were gaming the whole thing, which is why Tulsi Gabbard quit the DNC.
Right.
So now they don't want Bernie. He's not their person. Do Bernie's ideas work? Well, we have up in Long Hill, the Long Hill Report, we have a think tank, the Long Hill Institute, which is absolutely unfunded. It's the only think tank not in the tank. And we have basically come up with the iron law that everything reduces to its absurd. So Bernie's ideas, some of them will probably work.
Some of them were.
But some of them will probably not work.
And that can be true of any politician's ideas. There's no doubt about that.
Of course.
I mean, I think the issue really when it comes to his candidacy is that because our whole political and economic system is slid so far to the right that what his ideas, many of them are pretty much FDR Democrat ideas, but the system is slid so far to the right that they are now labeled as socialist and radical when they're really very much mainstream in Europe.
Which ideas are radical right, and which ideas, I mean radical his ideas are radical left, and which are FDR?
I'm thinking. I'm not describing the way I'm seeing them, because I think they all make sense a lot. If you look at, especially if you look at the way the rest of the advanced democracies do things, a lot of what he's talking about, especially things like Medicare for all, and I don't know if I necessarily like his version of it, or I think there's another version out there. It's Representative Jayapal's version of it, which is, they're both pretty good, and I think both would work. Jayapal has one where she would have everybody go in pretty much immediately. He phases it in over 4 years, if I remember correctly. And so that kind of a Medicare for all, single payer kind of a system is where pretty much the rest of the advanced world is. It's not totally, and it doesn't, and we were listening to somebody talking about the other day, actually it was the Massachusetts Senate debate last night, talked about, well, would you get rid of private insurance? None of those countries lack private insurance. They're all there. Mm-hmm. But the issue is that we need a system that covers everybody for the basic needs that everybody actually has. If you want to go get, liposuction, that shouldn't be funded by the public. But if you need life-saving surgery, that should. And I think we need to be seeing some of those kind of things tied into a much more responsible approach to how we deal with nature that stops polluting ourselves and causing these problems in the first place.
Okay.
And balances off food and other things that I think one of the things that they're starting to talk about the Green New Deal would help put some of those things back together again that have since been forcibly separated for a long time now, and creating problems because they are forcibly separated.
En question, mon ami, why am I speaking French? For years, France was held up for its system, has a great health care system, mm-hmm. good pension system. Mm-hmm. Things are not going well over there.
That's true. There's a lot of controversy, a lot of protest.
Because either the neoliberal bankers are wrecking it, that's one thing, mm-hmm. or sometimes you actually have to pay, the system runs out of money. I think there's something of both. Certainly the Rothschilds I definitely have their finger in a lot of stuff there in France, and Macron was a Rothschild flunky. But the system went on a long time, and mm-hmm. as I say, everything reduces, as we say at the Institute, everything eventually reduces to its absurd. Now, do you say, abattez la bourgeoisie, and let's see the French mob storm the Bastille again and get rid of Macron, and what are they going to do then?
I don't know. Historically, that does happen periodically.
Okay. Yeah. Or do you say, buck up, guys, you do have to pay for this system at some point.
Either way, they still end up paying for it.
No, yeah,
one way or the other.
They are, and that's the thing. We've got to think about this here. Mm-hmm. We have a prison system which has free health care, and we tell guys, if you decide you're a girl, we'll give you an operation in that prison. Why should we do that? There's that famous guy, he murdered his wife, mm-hmm. and he wants an operation, and I think he also wants custody of his kid.
In prison, you shouldn't have custody.
He gets official custody. He won't actually get, there's some reason he wants it fiscally or something, mm-hmm. financially or something. Do we say, you say no liposuction? Where do you draw the line? What if somebody says, I feel I'm a woman, or I feel I'm a man? Do you say the state does that? I would say it's.
I don't care either way.
I would say go this way. If you say, if you have evidence that your appendix is about to burst, we rush you to the hospital. If
I would totally agree. I think everybody would totally agree with that.
If you say, I gotta be me, on your own dime.
Well, I think that there's some argument, look, that the science actually does show that there are some physical, like brain changes between people who have, who identify themselves as the opposite sex.
So
there's plenty of evidence there to show that it's there.
So pay for it. Fine, great, be you. Don't ask me to make you you, or somebody down the street make you you. You be you. Oh boy, I love these little syllables. You be you on your dime. You want liposuction? Well, I'm sure you can find a doctor who says liposuction is health-giving. You don't think? Because, well, you've done a study, I know, of the medical journals, but...
No, I can't say that I have.
Okay. I'm sure we can find a study for everything. You've heard about the replication crisis.
And the science where they have problems studying.
Yeah, so we can find it. Yes. Okay. I can find it. In fact, I'm going to go call up 50 liposuctions right at graduates after we get out here, and I'll say, how you feeling? If they say great, that's a study.
And it's a study of sorts. It's not a very good study. It's not a very well designed study.
And how do you know the studies that say they might be brain thing? Because there's a guy down in Johns Hopkins that says it's a crock. The trans stuff is crock. I don't know if it's. How would I know? The only thing I'm going to do is choose the head of neurosurgery at Harrington Hospital. This was a discussion we had before then. So, I mean, you can say anything.
I think if you're trying to choose something like that, you can do enough interviews and find somebody who's competent and go with them. But I think that as a society, I believe that we can have a good, sane discussion and figure out what can go into a single-payer Medicare for all type of system, and what shouldn't. But I think that we kind of goes back to the argument that there's always other alternatives. I mean, I do agree that there's some other alternatives out there to pay for certain things, and I think we would have a difference of opinion on what should be in and what should be out.
All right. I know how it's going to end up because I was part of I wasn't part of it, but I saw it in action by some people who were working for something. 100 years ago, or it feels like 100 years ago. It wasn't that. I was a young man, and I had some friends who were psychologists, and they invited me to a social event. They were raising money to get the legislature. This was before there was any money. You had any money for psychotherapy or for mental health.
Right.
And they were raising money to get that into the state government, that it would be subsidized. Right. And you weren't, if you had a mental health problem, you could get it taken care of.
Okay.
But that might be a good idea.
I think it should be part of our medical system. Absolutely.
That might be a good idea. But they were not doing it because it was a good idea. They would be doing it because it would make them more money.
I'm sure, unfortunately, often a lot of people who lobby do that exactly for that reason. I agree with you.
Now, you think that, and you might be right. But why do you think that?
Because unfortunately, we see it over and over again.
Oh, we see a lot of crazy people.
Yeah.
We see a lot of crazy people. We see them.
What I was referring to is when you asked. I was thinking of it. You were asking about why do you think that they were trying to do it for their own interest to put it into the law? That's what I was answering.
Okay.
Yeah. I believe that mental health care should be part of our healthcare system as an inherent right, because the brain and the body are intimately connected. You cannot function properly, healthily, if one of them is dysfunctional, because there is no such thing as a separation. It's a fake separation.
This may or may not be true, and you say, how is he could disagree with it? I don't know if you ever heard of Karl Kraus.
I've heard of him.
Okay, he's an aphorist. He wrote The Last Days of Mankind. Okay. During World War I, he was a crazy guy.
Okay.
If ever there was one. Or wait, maybe he wasn't. He was either crazy or he wasn't. But he said, you know what he said of Freud? Psychoanalysis is the disease it claims to be the cure of.
There's some truth to that. I think psychology and the understanding of of the human mind and how it operates has taken leaps, huge leaps since Freud. I think Freud is a fraud in many respects.
You think it has taken, and maybe it has.
Because I think we understand how the brain works a lot more today, especially with the benefits of genetics and biochemistry and all this other stuff, that it's not just those things, because a lot of the social milieu matters, a lot of the kinds of feedback people get and peer pressure, whether it's good or negative, matters. You know, how they're raised matters.
Okay.
What their culture is matters.
You have heard.
All of these things all tie together.
You have heard of the, it's either repressed memories or false memories.
Of course.
Now, that's a big debate.
Mm-hmm.
But people are getting treated for something other people, just as credentialed, say is a fraud.
Okay.
So how do we decide what people get treated for? I told you last time you were here how of course you're going to say this is ridiculous, this never happened. Oh, I will occasionally say something outrageous.
Nah.
And somebody will say, you're crazy. And I say, define, not your definition, the dictionary definition of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Who's looked that up? Nobody's looked it up.
Mm-hmm.
But we like
I've never
to
said
think.
you were crazy. I think everybody
I
has a
didn't
right
say
to
you
be-
said I was
right.
crazy.
Okay. Okay.
I said, you're crazy. No.
Sometimes I am. Maybe I am. Who knows?
But the thing is we can't know.
I think all of our society is a little crazy.
Much of what we can't know, but we're willing to pay for it. And we'll end up paying for it depending on who has more influence.
There's some truth to that. But I think in the long run, it will still be beneficial to the society as a whole to have that kind of a system in place rather than the totally false individualistic system that we now have of you go buy your own insurance. Unless you're too poor to do it, then you end up on the state's dime. And you have a situation where you're getting these kinds of quote unquote, and I put in big quotes, insurance coverages that you can't in fact actually use because they're too expensive, they have too many deductibles, they have too many little, 2-point lines in your contract that says, oh, by the way, we don't cover 14 things that you actually have.
I live this situation because I'm over that age, and I have right now where my wife's insurance will be ending because she's retired, and we will completely be on Medicare, and we'll have to get something supplemental. And at my age, at 5, you have a reasonable idea that if you're healthy, you're going to get to 10 without needing major operations.
In our society, yes, that's usually true.
I can say I can't count to 10 on my 10 fingers. Well, I can't count to 10. I can't count to 10 figures on the number of operations I've had.
Okay.
But I've had a few more than I'd like to have. And they happen.
Yeah.
So I live this, and we're going to get a system. The question is, here, is it going to be a good system? Now, the French system, it's coming a cropper because of costs. It's renowned. But it's got, it's got to change. And what does it change? How's it going to change? Less care? Well, they will have to make those decisions between transgender and non-transgender. Liposuction, if they don't already. They probably, the French, they're too practical to say, oh, liposuction, yeah, we do that all the time. They probably say no. And they are generally thinner.
Okay.
So it's probably not that big a thing. But, there's something they will have to make hard decisions.
Well, and you have to make the hard decisions with any kind of major policy by definition. But I think when it comes to something like healthcare, I think we need to create a system that is flexible enough where you can kind of err on the side of inclusion. And that when it comes to the funding for such a system, quite frankly, the money is there. If we were not spending $740 billion on wars,
hey,
there
you are singing my song.
To prop up an empire that we don't need to be trying to maintain.
There you have.
The money is there.
The money. I'm not
We're
sure
just putting it into the wrong places, and we've been doing it for a long time at the expense of the American people.
Let me disagree only in this point. I don't know if the billions from the war, bringing it all home, not doing that, would be enough money, but I know it would be less painful. Let's
Agreed, totally.
Now, you had the Washington Post. They broke the story.
The Afghanistan papers?
The Afghanistan papers.
Mm-hmm.
There is no bloody reason to be there.
Nope.
Ever. We have no I mean, we don't have to be in Syria.
Yep.
We now know why we are there. It's the oil.
We should never have been in Iraq.
We should never have been in Iraq.
And we're in about 14 African countries we don't need to be in.
AFRICOM, why are we there?
Right.
And we're in NATO.
Mm-hmm.
When the Soviets ended, when the Soviet Union ended, we should have said, hey, we'll give you a couple of years to get this together, then it's au revoir.
I agree.
But
I agree.
there'd be all those Pentagon planners with nothing to do, the generals with, early retirement. And,
that's okay. Half of them are useless anyway.
well, you know, that Stable Genius book about Trump?
Yeah.
Now, they want to go after him in that book.
Oh, I'm sure.
But there's one thing I read about. I didn't read the whole book, but I've read about how when the Pentagon, the generals thought they were going to roll him.
Okay.
And they invited him in, and they said,
Yeah.
we have to do that. He says, you haven't, he screamed at him, you haven't won anything since 1940.
That's true.
He was right.
He's right.
Give Trump, give Trump the benefit of the doubt on that.
Yeah.
It is a worthless group. And I will tell you, if he gets us out of Afghanistan, whatever you want to say,
Mm-hmm.
he will have done better than Obama.
True.
He would have done better than Bush.
Mm-hmm.
Clinton wasn't in Afghanistan, but he bombed Serbia for no reason.
And the first Bush, who started the war,
First
had the
Bush,
first war with Iraq.
why we were in the Gulf War.
Right.
Reagan, at least, he worked with Gorbachev.
Right.
And
we
if you
need to
read-
do that again, absolutely, because we've been shutting the doors with Russia for years now,
Yes, but-
and they get to the point where they're looking at us going, we can't even talk to these people,
That's right.
and we have to be talking to them.
I tell you, if my candidate, who I would like to see being run in both parties, is Putin.
That's interesting. Why?
He's a better chief executive.
That is true.
He's
That is true.
head and shoulders above everybody. I mean, he kept us. He and Lavrov, the foreign
Yeah,
secretary,
there he is. Okay.
helped Obama on that red line when
Yes, they
Obama
did.
stupidly said, "Oh, I'm not going to let them cross the red line."
Yep.
Come on, tell me who's better. Tell me who's better.
He certainly looks like he certainly has a much stronger command of history, of the global affairs. I think part of that, ironically, is the fact that he knows that Russia is not the world empire anymore.
Yeah.
You know, because we keep seeing the propaganda in our country that conflates Russia with the Soviet
What you
Union
are saying,
basically without saying
I'm
it.
going to interpret what you said.
Okay. And I'll tell you if it's right.
He has a grasp of reality.
Yes.
As opposed to most of the people on the stage. Some days I think Trump does. Some days I wonder, but some days I think
It changes minute by minute,
Yeah.
I think.
I think
Which is a sign of insanity.
I think Tulsi has a grasp on reality.
I agree.
All the people who testified before Congress and the Senate were clowns.
Most of the people that were testifying to are clowns.
You want an argument? Go somewhere else. You're here. I like to think there's a little grasp of reality over this.
so, yeah.
I'm not going to say I definitely will claim that,
Right.
but yeah.
I mean, I think part of the problem is that we have a situation where there is so much confusion and fear being spread around, and anti-Russian propaganda, and anti-Chinese propaganda, and
Tell
anti-Iraqi,
me
and
why.
anti-Syrian,
Tell me why.
anti-Iranian money, and keeping people who are inept at their jobs in jobs.
Okay, why the people?
For the military mostly.
Why does Rachel Maddow want to go after Russia? She wrote a book about years ago about we have too many wars, and you know, why does she want to go after her? That I don't. You know,
Her
is she getting
personally, I don't know.
Is she
I mean,
getting a marching order? Is there somebody saying, Rachel, you can say anything as outrageous as you want, but you know, your job might not be here.
There's probably some of that
I
going
don't
on.
know.
Could be. I don't know. I mean, but I think it's interesting that we're seeing the same kind of mantra from most of the major media. Even an NPR.
Oh, you know.
Think about it. You listen to the supposedly public radio in our country talks about every time they bring up something about Iran or Russia, China to a slightly lesser degree, they will have somebody who will come in and spout the company line of, you know, we should be afraid for this, that, and the other reason, and this stuff is going on. And there was something, in fact, this morning was talking about the MIT investment in trying to create the new Silicon Valley of Russia. And they were talking about how this billionaire oligarch, Russian oligarch, who, quite frankly, I've never heard of, is involved in MIT, and he was on their board for a while until relatively recently. And they threw a lot of innuendo around, but there was nothing specific in there, except for the fact that he's a billionaire and he's Russian.
Well, I have written this in print, and I've said it. It happened to a woman I know. She was a fellow geeky, but she's given it up now. But she said, "You do listen to NPR, don't you?" And I said, "Well, of course I do. Mm-hmm. Every advanced totalitarian country has a Ministry of Information."
True.
This is how
there's multiple tentacles as a ministry here.
Is how the inner party tells the outer party what to believe, not
pretty
to think,
much. That's
not
true.
to think.
True.
So as we have reached, unfortunately, a very informative, I believe, half hour plus. I want to thank Gus Steeves for making the Odyssey, Hajira, whatever, from Southbridge to Charlton.
It was a long walk.
This is Richard Morchoe from the Long Hill Report, and please visit us on YouTube and like the Long Hill Report. Subscribe to the Long Hill Report YouTube channel. Thank you.